there. So I'm going to ask some questions. I often think of my role on the show, aside from charming, handsome host, as useful idiot, because I ask the questions I'm too dumb to know I shouldn't ask. So I apologize if one of these comes off as just a little bit rude, like asking a fellow salesperson about their numbers. But how often does it happen, how often does it happen that you put all that information together for a project and then you get shot down and have to go back to a new manuscript, even though you love the one, but presumably you love the one you just pitched?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, everyone gets told no on all levels of publishing. So it's not just the authors, it's not just the agents, but editors too. I've definitely, gotten told no after, during the second read stage, if other people didn't think the manuscript was strong enough, or if I approached the publisher for tentative talks and they looked at it, and they said I don't think, it's as great as you think it is, prove me wrong. And if I can't prove it, if I can't convince them, then the project dies even before I bring it to the board. Because usually by the time I bring it to acquisitions, I'm 90% positive that people will be okay with it unless someone brings up a serious red flag concern that totally kills the whole thing. And that has happened. It has happened in terms of oh, I don't know, and usually it's something that's sales based. If the author has a project and I really want to buy the project, but they have a poor sales track that I can't argue myself around to convince them that no, we should invest in them because it's a different project, different book, that happens sometimes. And that's only one example of of the various levels of when I am told no before I acquire something. So.
And that's even if the author is writing this book in a new genre, different from whatever book might have flopped in the previous genre.
Yeah, it really all depends, because I think that having an author start in a totally new direction that they previously had written in before that didn't do as strongly is a really great way to give an author a soft reboot and promote them to a publisher. And so it really all depends on the project, what the new direction is, whether we can, are we checking something? Oh, okay, sorry. And whether, whether the acquisition board believes that the direction is different enough that we can still invest in them. Whether there's other buzz around the author since the publication of their previous books that would encourage the publisher to give them a second chance. And oftentimes you might notice authors, being published by one publisher and then they have a totally different project, another publisher. And when you see cases like that, usually it's because, if for some reason they decide not to continue the working relationship with their previous publisher, they'll try someone, a new publisher to continue their career. And that's perfectly fine. And sometimes when authors choose to do that, it could be because their sales track was poor and their previous publisher had doubts about the next project, even if it was drastically different. So they had to move to another publisher entirely who believed in that project and believed they could overcome the sales track. And sometimes, and oftentimes it happens. Oftentimes, authors, jump houses, from project to project, because they're looking, for that particular project to find its best home. And sometimes that best home isn't with a publisher who published their previous work that didn't do it strongly.
And presumably now that you've got, I think about 8 years with Tor at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So a vast amount of experience in publishing, plus some jobs prior to working with Tor. Presumably you've taken some of those harder being blindsided by things you didn't see with the book, so that your track record, I would assume, is improving at this point when you go up to bat with your team.
Yeah, so and that's actually another factor. When an editor has worked for a long time at a certain publisher, everyone knows their style, everyone knows their taste, and it especially becomes more apparent because you're always doing second reads for your colleagues. So that hey, I'm reading this other high fantasy, that my colleague is going to acquire, like it's, because I think it's good and I know it's their taste, and I just want to affirm their taste, even if I might not acquire it myself. I'm like, I can tell you it's good, even though I won't buy it for myself, like you can buy it. I know that's what you do, and you'll do it well because that is part of your list and that is your strength, So having that teamwork understanding, between editors, but also between the editors and publisher and the editors and sales force also helps instill that level of confidence. So you're right. Like when I was a newer editor, and started acquiring, it was kind of like, it was more of a chance to prove myself and to prove what kind of taste I have. Because at that point, like aside from like, my immediate superior who like mentored me or something, like no one knows what I like. None of the sales force, probably have never seen me present my own book at that point. It kind of gives, so for newer editors, you do build a reputation through the books you acquire, how well they do, what kind of books like, you're attracted to. And Salesforce definitely pays attention. They definitely pay attention. Like, I was at a sales meeting, recently, for example, and one of our senior editors was explaining like, how they bought, this 5-book series from an author that's coming out, and it's going to be published very quickly, like, many installments with like a little bit of time in between. And they had a really short but to the point presentation about saying like, all right, this is the third book in series. Third book in series usually are the launching point because as we know, that is when the readership has been built up enough and encourage enough faith in the author, to help continue a series from that jumping off point. And they were right, but I think if they hadn't been working in publishing for over 20 years, they couldn't have, said that and had the sales force be like, oh yeah, that's right, that's true. I don't think I could have said like the same thing in that same way in less than 5 minutes. And be like, all right, that's all I have to say about this author. Just trust me about this. And they're like, yeah, we can do that.
You gotta have a pretty good reputation to pull that one off, I would think.
Mm-hmm.